This is Conversations at Lunch with Emmanuel Dike.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Conversations at Lunch, and I'm delighted to begin this episode without saying, my usual, that is saying whatever time I listen to this, somebody's going to give me, a knock for doing that one more time. But I'm delighted to be here, and I think the last couple of weeks have been an unraveling, different things happening, and some things you may call prophetic. Although I'm not the kind of person that likes to say because something that I said, then you saw signs of it, then it means that I'm prophetic. Now, sure, when it's negative, why don't we just do more of that in the positive side? But nonetheless, it doesn't change the fact that some things that are said that people do not believe, we see the proof of it in one or two ways. I won't spill the tea on that. Go and listen to my previous episode, the nuance of music, the nuance and appeal of music. And of course, stay tuned for Pop Disciple this Sunday. Zam Black has something special for all of us. But anyway, today we are delving into something really important, something really great, and I'm pretty sure that you would love it. But before we go on, ensure that you are following or subscribed to this channel, that you like this, and you're commenting, your favorite emoji right now in the comment section. Do not be a lazy Spotify user. There's a comment section now on Spotify. All you need to do is scroll down and comment your favorite emoji right now before we start. So, without further ado, let's go. Alright, so a while ago, I was having a conversation with somebody. And someone I respect, and we're having this conversation, and the conversation was around, something that I feel like is our very own undoing, and it's kind of why I'm titling this episode, something along the lines of, of course, to be furnished and better presented when it's uploaded, but something around how we are our very own undoing. What this means basically is I have seen it littered throughout time and history, especially amongst the most predominant race and color found on the continent of Africa, which is the Black people. I have found a unique strand of unique. When I say unique now, it's unique because it stands out, but it's also crazy that as much as it stands out and it is unique, it is found in every sphere of life, like the pyramid of influence, like from the lowest, most non-influential quote-unquote person to the most influential person. Almost everybody, people carry this particular trait and this particular gene, and it leads us to our very own undoing, you see. And this trait that I see that is so pervasive within the Black continent, you'll find it at your job, you find it at your church, you find it in your band, you find it, check everywhere, you keep finding this particular thing, and you're like, and this thing defies the very purpose of unity, the very purpose of our solemn assembly. It defies and it betrays that purpose, but yet we still find it there, and it's, I don't know, for some reason we've been able to live with a limp, and just like Jacob was able to live with his limp, many of us have been able to live with this limp, and it's our very own undoing. And for some reason, perhaps because we don't think we are undone, so we don't really count it as an undoing. Alright, picture this. I noticed that in American movies, when they are depicting wealthy and influential families, the way it would look is if it's a white home, wealthy and influential, white people would do this. White people would have housemates. And amongst the housemates, probably the cook or the chef, that's the chef, or the chauffeur or whatever, would likely be Black in a white American movie, right? The chef or the chauffeur will be Black. Now that's for a white, in a white community or a white home. They have black maids. Now this doesn't apply everywhere. It's just a sample. And now cross-reference that with a black movie. A black movie where they're trying to depict influence and affluence, avarice and all that. You find that a black movie would, this is a very wealthy family, and I noticed that you don't find them using white people. Instead, we use black people to serve black people as slaves. Even the very idea of emancipation, back in the days of colonialism and slave trade and all that. Even in those days, there were some black people who had more influence than other black people, and because of some kind of black crab mentality, they would not allow or be pleased by when another black person is climbing up to the same stage or platform that they are occupying. Do you understand what I'm saying? What it means is that in the days of the trade, when one person, a black person, say for example, has become integrated into society, into the classist groups. Now, of course, there's still racism even in there, but he is most preferred due to his loyalty to the white man. And of course, some honor is conferred on him, some wealth and influence is conferred upon this black man. But the moment this black man sees another black man or woman now try to rise through the ranks, you don't find this black man supporting the other. Instead, he tries to push the other one down so he alone can remain in the center of the spotlight. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if you notice this, but black people we are most concerned with breaking history. Like, we want to be the first black man to ever, the first black man to ever, the first black woman to ever. And I'm like, I see news blogs and outlets talk about how this artist is the first black woman first black African woman to ever, the first and I'm like, why are we doing this thing? Like, why are we doing first black African woman, first black African man to ever? Like, what is the point of this thing that we are doing? First thing we do when we do that is we make ourselves less, so that it makes it feel as though Africans in general are undeserving of maybe that award or that position, right? And I know that the mentality is that it is scarce to find an African there, but when we agree to that mentality, when we say, that, she's the first or he's the first black, the first African to ever do that. And by doing that, we make it look as though it was something that never really existed for the black person to begin with. It doesn't make any sense. And we find ourselves as lower or lesser human beings in Kedar and, pyramidal influence by doing so. Because we are very own undoing. We do it to ourselves. In the days of the slave trade, have you forgotten our kings sold our own people? Their own people. Kings liaised with a white man to sell their own people for mirrors. It is our own undoing. We are our very own undoing. This morning I made a couple posts on my status. It just happens like that. Sometimes you just it's like I'm on a roll. Sometimes I'm just constantly posting, as I feel like the Holy Spirit is highlighting in my heart. And I remember something that happened while I was in high school. What had happened was, it was a day like that. I don't even remember the day of the week, but we're in class. We had a teacher, and the class was going on. And right there in the middle of the class, a certain man walked into the class. I still remember his face. I don't like that man. He's big, and he never washes his shirt. His shirt is always very black around his feet. People who went to the same school with me, and probably my very same set, would understand. I would even recognize the man I'm talking about without even mentioning his name, and I wouldn't. So this man walked into the classroom, and he called out, just asked the teacher, sorry, just give me a sec. And now he called out. Now call out, not like he called this student out to walk out of the class to discuss something with him. No, instead he just yelled at his name and said, so and so, the mom told me to tell you that the laptop your sister said she's sending has already gotten here. Lenovo or something like that.
Are you enjoying this episode of Conversations at Lunch? Make sure to follow Imagine Studios 116 on Instagram and YouTube at Imagine Studios 116 to catch up with the whole crew. Now, back to Conversations at Lunch.
And this man said this thing in the class loud, enough for every other student to hear, our ears to perk, and everybody to look at this boy through a whole new lens. And I never really understood why he did it. I'll be very honest. Until this morning, it just dawned on me. Why did my teacher do this thing? Apparently, the boy's mother had called him, and the boy's mother was like something related to the PTA chair. I think she was the PTA chairman at the time. And we used to be really close growing up, even before we got into school. Our families, but over time, we grew separate, this distance and all that. And I began to wonder, like, why is it like that? You know what I'm saying? Like, why did my teacher come in to do that? And then it began to become clear to me that he did it to instill in this guy a sense of superiority, a sense of pride, and even class. Does it make any sense? Like, the moment he said that to him, we're like 42 students in the class, and you called out one, and you didn't call him outside to tell him this in private. Plus, it's not important. We're in a learning environment. Why are you telling a kid that he just got a laptop? Not like he got it because he, partook of a competition or anything like that. And you do that to this kid in front of other kids, 41 kids, and all the 41 kids are staring at this kid. Even the teacher who is talking doesn't have a laptop. And everybody begins to look at the boy different. Everybody wants to come to the boy's house to see his laptop. I remember many of us did, just to see his laptop, because it was announced publicly in class. Now, we're not in junior school, we're in SS1. I can never forget. Senior secondary school 1, class 1. And I began to wonder now, it somehow was what this kind of forms the origin of our low self-esteem. Mine in particular. This was one of the many contributing things that added to my low self-esteem. Where you never feel like you are enough, or you are worth enough, or you are, you never feel your worth because of some of these things that have kind of shaped what worth is to you. Growing up, you in school, you had teachers who had favorite students. In high school, secondary school, some of them, because how would we have an entire class of people who don't know people who don't know your subject, but instead you're focusing on that one pretty girl in class? Is that not demonic? We are very own undoing. God brought 42 kids your way to teach them and for them to learn how to be better people in society. But instead, now you have planted seeds of show, of avarice in their minds, and all these kids can desire now is to have wealth that would make other people announce their presence. And now, before you know it, these kids are not even 18 yet. They're already into internet fraud and all sorts and all manner. Why are we doing that? Why do we need to prove, or why do we need to make people feel less than who they are? This even happens not just in school, but even in church. The wealthy ones in church, they are appointed pastors and deacons, while the poor ones are left as elders. The wealthy ones in church are appointed committee chairmen and chairwomen, right? While the poor ones are just committee members. Sometimes are not even considered as members of the committee. The loyal ones are the poor ones, so the rich ones are very disloyal. They leave the church, they go to a bar to drink. They leave the church, they go to womanize. They leave the church, they go to smoke. They leave the church, but the pastor doesn't care. We are blinded to things like that. Instead, all we see is what they can offer. And this then births a cycle of what now? Superiority and classism, even in church societies. Where if you don't have X, Y, and Z, you're not considered as a genuine man of God. I've been in circles like this, I'll be honest with you. Like, ask me about it. I might not have all the experience, definitely, of, veterans in ministry, but I've had my buck, honestly. I've had my own buck and share. Like, I find it to be one of society's very own rots, like our very own undoing, and we did it to ourselves. They did it to your kid outside, you're doing it to another person's kid outside. That's just evil, isn't it? That instead of working to ensure that everybody around your life is elevated, instead, what do? You work to ensure that only you shines. And you say things like, God bless me so I can bless others. But no, what you're really asking is that God will make you great so that others can really love you for your greatness. And those who show a form of loyalty to you can then enjoy the blessings that you carry. That's witchcraft. Because we are very own undoing. Don't you think? Why do you think it's like that? Why do you think people set up societies? Why do you think society is set up the way it is? Why do you think the poor keeps getting poorer, the rich keep getting rich? Why do you think it's like that? Do you think it's God's design for humanity? I doubt it, honestly, though. Why are we our very own enemies when it comes to progress? Can't we all just progress together? Are you with me? This is the problem I have, honestly, with society. I mean, even me, I'm not escaped from this even yet. I have so much low esteem issues I'm dealing with even till this very moment, because my worth was never really shown to me growing up. My parents were people who positioned, because they're pastors, they were founders of a church, so they're always like low key, you know what I'm saying? You can't really like step up and show the world what you have, and you have to be like low key humble. And they treated their kids the same. I would have an idea. Instead, my dad would go and reach out to somebody in public, to furnish the idea. Now I understand better now, and I understand his diplomatic decision in doing that, because so it doesn't become like a family empire. I completely understand that, but it doesn't make it any different than it already is. Like, it doesn't change the fact that I genuinely felt my esteem of myself and worth drop because I wasn't appreciated for who I was. I've been in circles where my appreciation and value only came when I brought something to the table. And the moment I was unable to keep doing that, I felt that thing drop. I have had to lose friends. I'm telling you emphatically, I have had to lose friends, and I don't even want them ever texting me again, right? For fear of getting blocked. And I've had to lose friends simply because I noticed that the way that other person perceived me was not as a friend. And this person preaches about, the power of friendship and even today. But I find it that this person never quite lived this thing out. They didn't see me as a friend. I invested as much as I could into the friendship or relationship, but I discovered that the friendship only existed on a currency of influence. Oh, what could he bring? What can he bring to the table? I want my contact list to be full of connections. See, the moment we all start to buy into that thing that if you don't have at least 5 people in your contact list that can give you 200 million naira right now, you don't have a contact list, what you have are phone numbers. That's some kind of demonic mentality. Of course, I know the power of connection and networking, but somehow we have replaced communal fellowship with what? Networking. Everything now is networking. Church program, massive, we are networking. Convention, we are networking. Prayer conference, we are networking. We want to be with the next happening dude. We want to exchange numbers. We want to take pictures. Like, when the society gets so poor, like, we will do anything to get a check from a wealthy man. I don't even care if his soul is as wealthy as his bank account is. Like, it's that bad in society because we are our very own undoing. I mean, we are the reason why we are where we are. We are our very own undoing. Even there was a time in my life I discovered that I wanted to do good for people, not because I wanted them to do some kind of good back for me, but because I wanted them to mention me when they mention good people. My self-esteem was so poor. My intention behind good was tainted with a desire for external gratification, a desire for external, an external acknowledgement of my good, my worth, in a sense. It's that bad because society is its very own undoing. That's why we find value and worth in all the wrong places. We find value and worth in sex. We find value and worth in porn. We find value and worth when we do the wrong things, when we dress in a certain way, obscene. All our cleavages are out, so we can get people look in our direction, and we feel like, yep, I still got it. I mean, why do you have to feel like you still got it to know you still got it? And we say we are awoke and we are embracing a new, a higher level of revelation or rema, and we change our lifestyle. We get piercings, we get earrings, we get dreads, we do all these things, and it's not. It's not. This is not something. All I'm saying is it's a proof of how badly our worth has been affected because we are our very own undoing. So some of us, our parents did it to us. Some of us, our grandparents did it to us. I discovered that pride runs in my bloodline. Pride does. It's something I've known for a while. I hear it in the way people speak. My cousins speak. My uncles. I hear it and I'm like, well, why do we have to do this? And it's something till this very day that I fight against, because sometimes you think pride is only associated with when you are rich. Ooh, it gets worse when you are wealthy. There are some kinds of pride that exhibits itself when you are nothing. My goodness. Wow, we are our very own undoing. One of the most disappointing and most discouraging, I'll record a podcast one day where I'll talk about how 2025 was not the year I planned it to be. I'll be very honest with you. There is nothing I'm doing right now in 2025 that is how I planned it in 2024. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You might not believe it. Well, you gotta stick, till the day I drop that podcast, if I ever do. One of the plans I had for 2025 was to do a program, and sometime earlier in the year. In fact, we had all the flyers ready. We're in active talks with the people we're supposed to collaborate with and everything. And I'm not shaming anybody by saying this, but I just have to get it off my chest and let people know what really went down. And as we had planned, I was in talks with the pastor. He gave us his approval. He asked me to communicate it with the then fellowship president, which I did. And the fellowship president was somewhat confused. He said to me that he wasn't clear on some of the things I was sharing with him. I was like, oh wait, I just finished speaking with your pastor. I wouldn't lie that he could confirm with pastor. He said he would. It took him a minute or so. I don't know what was wrong with the guy. Then I reached out. I was constantly like, what's going on? Time is of the essence, because we had chosen a date and the pastor had agreed to the date with me. And eventually, it wasn't going well. The pastor himself called me one other day and started asking me some questions like, what church do I go to and all that. I gave him the lowdown, breakdown, everything. Eventually, it didn't happen. The event was postponed indefinitely. In fact, this is my first time announcing or talking about this event in public, because it never held. Because what happened was that the pastor promised, he said, when we get, on so and so day, let us have a meeting, myself, yourself, maybe one other person from your end and one other person from my end, so we can discuss how the event would go. I reached out to him on the said date. He said, oh, I'm so sorry, I go home now, I'm tired, I'll reach out to you tomorrow. Well, if he reached out to me now, I'll be glad, because he never did again. And the reason I never bothered reaching out to him was that I discovered that the problem wasn't a timing problem. The problem wasn't a tiredness problem. The problem was a denominational thing. That I didn't actively belong to the denomination he was a part of. And because of that, he would not accept my services or my grace in that sense. And I felt bad. I felt depressed. That I am first considered not for who I am or for what I have or for what I am on or who I am loyal to, but instead I am first considered by the name of the church I attend. I'm first considered by the associations I keep. Oh, I'm friends with so and so apostle. Then you are wanted in my program. Why? Because we are our very own undoing. I hope as you listen to this podcast today, you are beginning to see areas where maybe similar things were done to you and you never really healed from them. Or maybe you've done similar things to people and you never really dealt with it. I think now would be the time to make amends. Now would be the time to set things straight. If you ever discarded anybody knowingly or unknowingly for the fact that they were poor or they were not as wealthy as you are, or they were not as wealthy as the friends you desire to keep, now might be the time that you repent and you do some reconciliation. This is like a heavy conversation. And I'm glad I have it. I'm glad I had it. I am glad I had it. Man, stay tuned till the next episode. I just might go deeper in August. I love you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I see you in August. I see you in August.
Pretty sure you enjoyed this episode of Conversations at Lunch. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to be alerted when a new episode drops. This podcast was powered by Imagine Studios 116.